Hello, welcome to my channel and thanks for tuning into this video. Today I'm finally doing a video on bronzers for fair skin. So I've been putting off doing this video because I felt like I still haven't found the perfect bronzer and I still feel like that, but I figured I would just do this and show you my best options up to this point, and if in the future I find better ones I can do another video like this. But I just wanted to show you my suggestions for now. So if you'd like to see that, just keep on watching. All right, I'm gonna start off with two Tom Ford bronzers. So the first one is the Terra bronzer. Looks like this, and this I would say is probably the most cool toned bronzer that I have. And I think this is really great for fair skin because it's cool toned and because I think it's quite a buildable formula actually. So even for the very fair skin, this is usable if you use a light hand, and if you just want to add more, you can just keep building it up and it never really looks heavy or too overdone. And this is what it looks like. So you can see it's got a nice coolness to it and sort of a rosiness to its color and quite a blendable and buildable finish. Next up, also from Tom Ford, is this Skin Illuminating Powder Duo. This is in the shade 01 Moodlight. Has a highlighter and what I would consider a bronzer. This can be used as a highlighter for people with deeper skins too, but on my type of a skin tone, it's great as a nice sort of glowy bronzer. You can see it has a great shine there. And it's, you know, not too dark of a tone. I would say it's a little bit warmer than Terra, but overall it's really quite a neutral toned bronzer. And this is one, I have to use this more. I forget about this one all the time, but it's really quite a nice bronzer for fair skin tone, especially if you like a very glowy bronzer. Now for more glowy bronzers, I have a few more. This is the Chantecaille Real Bronze in Sirena. So this is actually quite warm toned, but again, it's very like sheer and buildable. So if you want a more warm toned bronzer that's glowy and also pretty hard to overdo, I think you just kind of can build up as much as you want or as little as you want. This is really nice and it has such a nice sort of seamless, natural, glowy finish on the skin. So that's Chantecaille Sirena. And then next up of my glowy bronzers is the Guerlain Terracotta Nude. This is one that's kind of supposed to be a skin adaptive shade, and I don't know if that's really true, but I do know that I like it on my skin. You can see, again, it's one of those ones that's glowy, quite sheer and buildable. I know a lot of people use this as highlighter as well, but for very fair skins, it can be a really nice bronzer, and you can see it has a little bit of a rosiness to it as well. So that's a pretty good choice for fair skin. And it's really nice for just sort of bringing a bit of color to the complexion overall. Because it's so sheer, you can put maybe a little bit more on than you would of a normal bronzer and put it on more of your face. You can almost be sort of more haphazard with your placement of it because it is so sheer. So Guerlain Terracotta Nude, that one does have a scent. And then I wanted to also bring up the Kosas bronzer. This is the shade Light, and I really love this bronzer. It's fairly yellowy. It's a baked formula as well, like the Chantecaille one, and the Tom Ford Duo there I think is also baked. So that's what the Kosas one looks like. It's just, again, it's sort of similar to the other ones in terms of it's very natural looking but nice and glowy if you like glowy. It's a very, you know, light tone, very buildable, and just really nice. And then one other baked one that I wanted to show, I don't know if this is still readily available. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Lightgasm palette. It was limited edition, but she does often bring back limited edition products. So the bronzer in this one is really very sheer and light as well. And it's actually quite a neutral tone. So that's one that, you know, if you see this palette become available, you might be interested in it. All of these are baked and very sheer, buildable, and a little bit shiny. I need the right kind of brush for this, quite a stiff natural hairbrush I find is the best option for these powders, but if you have those types of brushes, you might really like this palette, and the bronzer I think is quite good for fair skin. Now moving into some more matte bronzers. Here is the Gucci bronzer in the shade 1, Fair. And this, along with the Ford Terra, those are the two coolest tone bronzers that I have. And I do like this one, but I don't reach for it as much as the Ford because I find it is just as cool, I would say, but it's a little bit deeper. So I just have to be a little bit more careful about when I'm using this one, but it's a really nice shade and you can see very blendable and buildable as well. Next up is the Mario bronzer. I just did a review on this. And this one, it's not like a super light tone, but the reason I wanted to include this is because it's probably the most sheer and buildable of all the matte bronzers that I have. So even though it doesn't look like it's a very light tone, it can be applied so lightly and built up so gradually that I think this actually is a pretty good option for fair skin if you like a matte bronzer. Next up is the Victoria Beckham Matte Bronzing Brick. I have it in the shade 1, and specifically this color here is very, very light. You can see it there. It is very yellow though, so if you're not into yellowy toned bronzers at all, you probably wouldn't like this, but this is definitely one of the lightest bronzer colors that I have. The formula is beautiful. The other side is actually a very good contour shade, and the two work together really well. I would say the result is, you know, a little bit warmer, but the contour shade on its own is actually not that warm. It's just when you combine it with the other one. So if you're looking for more of a contour, but one that's not too cool, but still cool toned, that shade is really great for that. I have two powder bronzers left that I want to talk about, and then I just have a couple of creams. So this is the Maybelline City Bronzer, and I would say this is one of the lightest bronzers you can get at the drugstore. And it's quite similar actually to the next one that I'm going to show you, which is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush. They're quite similar tones and formula actually too. So that's the Maybelline City Bronzer. The shade is 100. It's another one of those quite yellowy toned ones though. And then next is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush in the shade 1 Fair. And let's just see those next to each other. Quite similar. Again, both are quite buildable, soft matte finishes, and quite light in tone. Actually, looking at them next to each other, the Maybelline looks a little bit less yellow than the Charlotte Tilbury. So those two are the lightest options that I have, I think, along with the lighter shade in the Victoria Beckham Duo. So the next up, just a couple of cream products to show you. The first is this Tower 28 Bronzino. This is the shade Sunkissed. This is a new shade that they came out with this year. And this is really very light and very glowy. It's almost the type of product that you could use as sort of an all-in-one cheek product as your bronzer, blush, and highlight. So if you like cream products, it's very emollient. You might like this, and it's very shiny too. Almost a metallic finish, but very beautiful. And then lastly, I wanted to show my two Salt New York cream bronzers. So I have the contour shade and the lightest bronzing shade. I think they've renamed the contour shade to Taupe now. So if you were looking for it, that's what it's called at this time. But the one I have is called Contour. So that's what the contour shade looks like. And then that's what the bronzing shade looks like. I like to mix these together or layer them, and I think that works really beautifully. Again, the bronzing shade is a little bit yellowy, but I actually find it looks quite nice. It's a little bit more neutral than some of the other yellowy toned bronzers. And then the contour shade is actually really quite nice and cool toned, but again, not too cool toned. So I think that's a nice option as well. And I really like the two mixed together because I find I get quite a neutral result when I do that. And they're still both quite light in tone and, you know, very buildable, very blendable. I'm going to try to do a bunch of swatches on my arm and put that up now with labels of what each shade is. And then I just wanted to give, I guess, some general tips for choosing bronzers for fair skin tones. You know, one is, of course, to look for light tones. Another thing to look for is the undertones. So even if a bronzer might seem a little bit dark for you, if it has the right undertones, that can make all the difference. An example that I have is the Westman Atelier, which I didn't really feature here, but I just want to show you. It's not an especially light bronzer, but again, it does have a buildable formula like all of the ones that I've shown you here. And there's something about the undertones of this that just work for me. I know it looks quite warm, but there is also some red sort of rosiness in this. And I think that for my skin specifically, I have fairly cool toned skin, but it does have a bit of yellow in it. And I also have freckles. So sometimes even a little bit of a warmth or maybe oranginess or peachiness in a bronzer isn't the worst thing for me because of the mixture of the tones going on in my skin and the freckles and so on. So considering the undertones, I think is quite a useful tip as well. And then the other tip is the formula. I think when you have fair skin, it's generally easiest to go for bronzers that are very sheer and very buildable, because that gives you the control that you need to be able to get the level of bronzer that you want. Sometimes you just want the lightest little hint of color, especially like in wintertime. I think that's what I like. You don't want to go too heavy with the bronzer, but then if you get one that is nice and buildable, you can carry it through to summertime when you might want a little bit of a stronger, more bronzy, you know, slightly tanned look, and just build up more. Now, I have had some suggestions from viewers on a couple of bronzers to try. One person mentioned that Bobbi Brown used to have bronzers and they had one that was quite pinky toned. I haven't been able to find that online, so it may have been discontinued. And then Rachel, I think, mentioned one from Flower Beauty that I'm quite interested in trying. So I am going to get that at some point to try. I'm quite curious about that. One other one that just came out was the Huda Glowish bronzers. The lightest shade of that is kind of intriguing to me. It's so hard to tell though from pictures online because they can look completely different from what the product actually looks like in real life. But I like that that one has sort of a marbled finish, so it has almost a white that mixes in with the bronzy shade. So I think that could perhaps be a good option. So I am curious about trying that, and I would really like to know if any of you have tried that lightest shade of the Huda Glowish, or actually any of the shades, and what your thoughts are on it, because I am considering trying that one out too. So I think that's about it for this video today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope it was helpful for you. And if you have any comments or questions, I'd love to see those below. If you'd like to see more from me and you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I would really love for you to do so. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.